The assumption, the challenge is that we like avoiding difficult conversation. And now having to work together requires us to engage in the difficult conversation.
Hello and welcome to Up Close and Personal at Invoked Studio. My name is Ria and I'm going to be hosting us through our conversation with Mr. Anurag Kundu today. We're going to be diving deep into the heart of leadership and education equity. Let me introduce Mr. Kundu first. Anurag is a member of the PDC. He's a former chairperson of Delhi Commission for Protection of Child Rights and a 2013 Teach for India Fellow. During his term at DCPCR, he systemically reformed the vertical and has addressed many issues regarding child protection. Anurag, it's lovely to have you here today. Thanks for giving us your time. I want to start by asking you about education leadership, right? We've come a long way from working just with teachers and working on infrastructure, which are also very important aspects, but we've evolved as a sector to now work at education leadership levels. Tell me what you think is the biggest challenge that education leadership faces in India, and you can address separate levels, or if you think there's a blanket challenge, tell us that.
See, Ria, on a surface level, the system has several challenges. Our sheer inability to get students who have spent years and years in school system to even read basic text or to perform basic arithmetic operations. But that's symptomatic. Our sheer inability to make our students employable for even simpler, very simple jobs of lives is a challenge, but that's symptomatic. And essentially these things are symptomatic of the facts that we over the years have built an education system which is not meant for everybody. It is a system which is meant to sort and filter at every stage, to sort out and filter out. At every stage, the students, the system does not deserve worthy of education. And we haven't built our system for all students and for equity. And that also in some sense is only a symptom. The actual core challenge that education system in India faces, or the leadership of it faces, is essentially that those responsible for governing school system, public school system, have given up on it. And it's reflected in even the kind of goals we set for ourselves, even the kind of language that we use, right from the teacher to the very senior leadership of education, the government in general. A government school's child does a little or demonstrates something very little success, and we are very happy, as if we didn't expect that. We are very surprised, as if we never believed in our children. And it is also reflected in the simplest half a minute activity, that when we visit a government school and we ask, what do you want to become? And let's say one of the child stands up and says, I want to be an astronaut. And another says, I want to be a doctor. We of course verbalize good things. We of course say appreciative things like, of course you can do it. But somewhere deep down in our heart, we don't really believe it. Because we expect too little.
Right.
And we have given up. And that is the leadership challenge that our system faces today, which gets reflected in several symptoms, of which foundation literacy numeracy gap is one, unemployability is another, and 100 others.
Right.
We don't believe in our children.
That's very profound. I mean, I know what you're talking about because I've seen that in front of me, but I never thought of it as the challenge that exists in education leadership today. So thanks for bringing light to
To me, it's the root, and everything else emanates from there.
Got it. So this is a massive challenge, right? Us not believing in the biggest education system in the country, the public education system. That's a big challenge, and for that, we at Shiksha Lokam currently believe that collective action is the key. We don't want to claim that there's one entity, one organization, either Samaj or Sarkar or Bazaar that's going to address this problem. We're very actively involved in collectives. But we know that bringing a diverse group of people together to work towards one common goal is a challenging task. So what do you have to say about the power of collective action, and what kinds of challenges do you anticipate when you
Let me flip it.
Okay.
The fact that there are diverse groups and diverse people from diverse backgrounds thinking differently.
Right.
One way of framing it is that it's challenging and it's hard. Right. Then otherwise, is it not fascinating, exciting?
Absolutely.
And the moment we frame it like that, it's an exciting space, that I will say something and Ria will perhaps disagree.
Right.
And will offer a different hypothesis or explanation of the same set of facts we may have both observed,
Right.
is in itself quite an enriching process.
Right.
And also reflects that Ria may have seen some things and observed some things and felt some things and thought some things. So would I have.
Right.
And it's only the two and two are put together, we are able to arrive at somewhat more meaningful and more complete picturization and visualization of the problem.
Right.
So in many sense, collective action is the key. But we need to stop seeing this as a challenge. Essentially, what we are then saying is, even the existence of family is a challenge. I and my father have never been able to agree on two things in our decades together. Me and my mother rarely agree on some things. Except perhaps in a soap opera, we rarely agree on some things. Me and my brother are rarely able to agree on any two things. We can go to a restaurant and will not be able to agree on the dish that we will order.
Right.
And that's normal. We need not see it as a challenge.
Right.
It's a fascinating process. Having said that, also Ria, collective action requires certain degree of humility as well. It is to say that one entity, let's say Sarkar, runs its 1,000 schools, Punjab runs about 20,000 schools, Delhi runs about 3,000 schools, municipal corporation and the state government put together, and I'm sure Karnataka government runs tens of thousands of schools as well. And it is a key player. There is no gain said about it. But to say that Sarkar alone can solve the problem, if that were true, Sarkar would have solved it by now. But yet, here we are discussing challenges of the education system. And that requires some level of humility to say, there are a lot of things, not some things that I don't understand, that perhaps other organizations understand. And that could be more innovative teaching methods. And that could be how do we re-envisage and reimagine our textbooks. Or that could be how do we reimagine or manage or engage with our children differently, with greater dignity, with less violence than what we've experienced when we were growing up or our parents experienced when they were growing up, and so on and so forth, because times have changed. That also requires us to re-envisage what gets taught to begin with in the classroom. All of this requires humility and hundreds and thousands of people at work from different dimensions. And a large machinery also monitoring and evaluation telling us something works and something does not, and why something works and why something does not. So all of that requires collective action. There is no other way.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. I mean, it makes sense that we should not be calling it a challenge. And that, you know, there's the beauty of just appreciate the richness of it and accept that it's a thing like your family and move on, do it. Thanks for...
The assumption, the challenge is that we like avoiding difficult conversation.
Right.
And now having to work together requires us to engage in the difficult conversation. And that's where the language of challenge emerges from. But I'm saying we need not avoid a difficult conversation.
Right.
We can do better than that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to shift gears a little bit and talk about movements. So at Invoke It, I'm sure you've already heard, but we're talking about movements, building movements, because we believe in the enormity of the challenge. What, in your experience, would be briefly a recipe of a successful movement?
I'm not a social scientist to sufficiently understand what would be the recipe or the ingredient of a successful social movements. So I would operate from a very limited understanding of what it takes to make social movements successful. And two or three things that I have, in my limited understanding, seen play an important role. One is the participative approach. How participative do we make the entire process? And how much spaces do we create for different people to engage? How much different spaces do we create for different people to do? How much different spaces do we engage for people to say things which may be inconvenient? So that's one sort of key ingredient to me. The second is a clear articulation or experience of what the problem is. The problem minus the Asar report in education is we were not able to articulate what is the challenge at hand. And the asar over the last almost 2 decades now has actually helped us build a vocabulary to say that we have sent our students for 5 years, 8 years to a school system which can't get them to read 3 sentences in their mother tongue. And it's a problem, and it's a profound problem. It's given us that kind of tool to articulate, visualize, and communicate at large scale in a simplified manner to say this is the grievance. So that's the second sort of important ingredient from my limited understanding of a social movement.
Right.
That makes the ground fertile. That does not mean social movement will happen.
Yeah.
That makes the ground fertile.
Yeah.
And 3 is the moral courage to say, and relates to Pravesh's point, that we can imagine, and we can perhaps not just imagine, we can get to a different India, we can get to a different way of schooling. And that moral imagination needs to be socialized from 1%, 10%, 100%, 100,000 people. And that's the important ingredient.
Make that good vision and that trust, the moral imagination vital. And then the movement will follow.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm going to move into our next segment, which is the rapid fire. I don't think I need to introduce this segment to you. It's just me asking you casual questions. You're going to not have too much time and just answer.
Okay.
Okay. You ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll find out.
Okay. If you were a superhero, what would be your superpower?
I wish I would have the ability to alter the texting between 2 people.
What?
If you are texting with, let's say, your boss or friend, I wish I had the power to alter it.
Okay, I'm going to ask you before we release this, if we should release this.
I'm perfectly all right.
In the public domain. Coffee or tea?
Neither, actually.
Okay. Morning person or night owl?
Night out.
Okay. What's the most adventurous thing you've ever done?
I'm very scared of heights, and I've done paragliding and parasailing both. But most of all, I have lived with absolute strangers in all of my travels across Europe.
Fantastic. If you could master any one skill instantly, what would it be?
I wish I could communicate in a manner that hundreds and thousands of people would understand.
Okay. Beaches or mountains?
Both.
Both. Okay, my last question to you is, what is your message to teachers? One message.
There are heroes that write destinies. They use blackboards.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. It's a lovely message. Thank you so much for giving us the time today, and it was lovely getting in conversation with you.
Thank you very much.
This was it for this segment of Up Close and Personal at Invoke It Studio. I'll see you with the next one.